Hello, property nomads. Hope you're well. Hope you have recovered from your eating, drinking, your festive period, hanging out with your friends, family, and whatever you've been up to. We hope that you had a very good Christmas, very good New Year, and in general, a very good festive period. Yes, we're back now. We're back with the usual Monday, Thursdays, and we're back with a lot of fantastic content for you on the podcast. This episode, we're going to be looking at a particular country that is really going for gold. We've got a lot of interviews lined up as well. Mark Champ and I will be also doing our 2024 predictions as well. So loads to listen out to on the podcast. So this country is going for gold, and it's a country that you might not think would necessarily go for gold. And the purpose of this is to open your eyes as into why a lot of countries and central banks are going for gold. Now, we spoke before at length on both the YouTube channel and the podcast. Countries like China, Russia, they have been buying tons and tons of gold over the last 10, 15 years. India also buys a lot of gold. A lot of that is also for ceremonial purposes, weddings. If anyone that's ever seen or been part of an Indian wedding, they are absolutely ginormous. I know a couple of friends that have been involved in them, and they say it's one of the best experiences of their lives. And people bring their bling to Indian weddings. Although that being said, the Indian central bank is buying gold as well. But this country we're going to talk about might not be a country that you would think would buy loads of gold, but their central bank has been buying plenty of gold, and that country is Poland. So the Polish central bank has bought roughly 300 tons of gold in recent years, and the reason for that is to bring its gold to GDP ratio in line with the Eurozone average. Now, if you're not aware, the EU has this almost like a covert requirement for nations to have a certain amount of gold to their GDP. And the reason for that, and again, there's a lot of murmurings behind the scenes, but the more you read into it, the more you realize this probably not saying it will, but it will probably happen, is that there's going to be a new shift to a gold standard. Now, a gold standard is something we had in the late 19th century. I urge you to go and read about the history of gold. And the purpose of this episode in particular is to say that this sort of stuff is happening, and it will have a massive impact on how the world operates moving forward. Yes, we're property nomads. Yes, our bread and butter is talking property, and we have also been looking at other things outside of property. And the more that we explore topics like this, the more that we realize is, although property is going to play a key role in what we do moving forwards, that actually we should diversify ourselves a little bit, because if we can identify trends that are happening moving forwards, then that's important. But also then taking what we're learning and then putting that into podcast format or sometimes YouTube format to then help you, because these might be things that you might not have thought of, and there could be some fantastic opportunities here. We always say we're not IFAs, we're not independent financial advisors. Please don't take whatever we say as advice. All we're doing is we're learning, we're taking action, and then we're saying, hang on a minute, this makes really good content, informative content that hopefully someone else out there may benefit from by taking action if they want to take action. Going back to Poland, so they bought 300 tons of gold recently, and basically what the EU is saying, whether it's behind closed doors, is that this is a GDP requirement, gold to GDP ratio requirement. We want you to have X amount of gold because we believe that what's going to happen moving forward is we're going to be shifting to a new gold standard. Now, if we shift to a new gold standard, that could then lead to a massive revaluation in gold itself. So gold in terms of dollars, because that's the normal measurement of gold, it's about $2,000 give or take at the moment. And we saw it spike a few weeks ago, to hit its all-time high. It then dropped off a little bit, and it's been hovering in and around $2,000. Now, if gold is revalued and it's based on the debt that the world has, then there are different ways of working that out. But some people have been saying that gold could easily go to $5,000. It could go to $10,000. It could go as high as $20,000, because all this currency and all this debt that we've got flying around. What would mean is that if we have to peg gold to the debt that we've currently got, then the price of that gold is going to go through the roof. And that's where you might have seen all these articles and people saying, you know, $5, $10, $15, even $20,000 gold. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, nor should you really look to acquire metals for that reason. But if that's a reason that works for you, then that's absolutely fine. But we have to open our eyes and say, well, actually, this could potentially happen. It might not happen, but it could happen. And if it does happen, and you're a central bank, well, you're laughing. You're literally laughing all the way to the bank, because again, with accounting policy and how they play around with the numbers, that's going to have a massive impact on the balance sheets. It will then provide more confidence in, it will give people more confidence in general, because the bank has gold. And ultimately, gold is the way forward. Gold just has this allure to it. It has this aura, and it has this reliability. Gold never lets you down. That's the feeling that we get. Now, of course, that's from a central bank point of view. If the gold is revalued, for example, and it's revalued at $10,000, and you're sat there with 10 ounces of gold, then congratulations, on paper, you've got $100,000. Now, if you bought that gold at $2,000 an ounce, so you've paid for 10 ounces, $20,000, and all of a sudden gold is revalued at $10,000 an ounce, your $20,000 investment is now worth $100,000. Now, the caveat on that is those dollars might not get you very far, but you can see from an investment point of view that, you know, if that does happen, you're also going to be laughing. So again, we'll go back to what we said at the start. We're not IFAs. Don't actually listen to what we're saying, but these are things that are up for you to decide. And this is why we record podcasts like this, because we have this belief that we think this is likely to happen, and we've taken the necessary action ourselves. Going back to Poland, so in order to become Eurozone eligible, maybe it's to get the euro, they need to be buying a lot of gold, because they need to have this gold to GDP ratio. There's a chart out there, and oddly, the best country at the moment, so if you look at gold reserves in comparison to GDP, and believe it or not, the best country out there is Italy. Italy's gold reserves in comparison to their GDP is actually relatively high. And that's also very, very surprising, because Italy is not a country that's necessarily known for its fiscal responsibility, should we say. On the same chart, and I appreciate you're not able to see it in the podcast, the rate that Poland has been buying after 2008 is incredibly high. And it's only Ireland that's just behind it in terms of buying. And again, reason for this, probably want to get involved in the EU. And again, they have probably been told, I would imagine, that hang on a minute, we might be shifting at some point to a new gold standard. If we do that, you're going to need a lot of gold, because then people are going to still have confidence in what the central bank and what the government are doing. Hence why there might be a push to this. And of course, I might sound like I'm being very facetious with this. It's because this information is not out there. The EU will probably always going to deny that there's a secret hidden agenda behind the scenes. But again, these are the things that we've picked up on and that we want to share with you, because we believe this is important, and this could potentially be life-changing, especially if you're on the correct side of the trade. what makes Poland very interesting is in the basically before 2017, Poland had about 103 tons of monetary gold, which was at 1% of its GDP. But in order to get on par with the other members of the EU, it's needed to be aggressive in its gold purchasing. So from 2018, that's exactly what the Polish central bank has done. It now holds 334 tons, which is about 3% of Poland's GDP. And again, I mean this with all due respect to Poland. The reason we've done this episode is Poland's not normally a country that you would associate with aggressive gold buying. And you have to ask yourself, why would a country like Poland be wanting to do this? And again, this really comes down to a potential secret EU agenda, and that they know something that you probably don't know. And that is likely to be a gold standard that might be surfacing up again. We've already had a classical gold standard before. Again, that was back in the late 19th century. Although gold was pegged, currencies were pegged. Ultimately, World War I sort of got in the way, along with a lot of other factors that I won't go into on this episode. And then the ultimate nail in the coffin was Nixon taking dollar off the gold standard in 1971. And from 1971, we've just been on this sort of floating fiat currency thing, which will ultimately fail. So this is why people are looking at going back onto a gold standard potentially. Interesting from the Dutch central bank, though, just to finish this episode off, there was a really intriguing interview with the Dutch central bank a little while ago, and a reporter asked to the head of the Dutch central bank, why do we need gold? And I quote this: "Gold is the ultimate anchor of trust. If the entire financial system collapses, you still have the gold, and the gold retains its value." End quote. That will tell you everything you need to know about gold. That will tell you why sensible central banks and people around the world, individuals, businesses, are buying gold and have been buying gold for the last X amount of years. Again, we are not investment advisors. We are not telling you to go out and buy gold, but by sharing this information and a lot more information as we do provide on the YouTube channel as well, please go and subscribe to that to get notifications and to get more videos about this sort of content. We have taken action that we think works and that we think will work moving forwards. We would advise you to do your homework and then do what you think is necessary to protect you, your family, and everyone you know moving forward. Because what's going to happen is very likely going to be a ginormous transition. And if you are on the right side of that trade, then congratulations, you are probably in for some better times than a lot of other people that are not looking at gold. So yes, Poland coming up, buying a lot of gold, and the other country, bizarrely, again, is Hungary. But again, we think that they know something that you might not know. So Poland is going for gold, and maybe it's something you should look at as well. Thank you for listening to Property Nomads podcast. A big favor to ask is please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. And if you would like more content and different content from what we provide on the podcast, do head over to our YouTube channel as well, YouTube/Property Nomads. Link for the YouTube channel is in the show notes as well. We're going to grow as big as we can on the podcast and YouTube this year, and continue to do so moving forwards. And thank you for your help, because we appreciate everything you do by telling people about the podcast, by subscribing yourself to both the podcast and the YouTube channel. But do have a look at gold. It's going to be a major player moving forwards. Thank you very much for listening to Property Nomads. See you in the next episode.